Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ala ali Muhammadin kama sallaita ala Ibrahim wa ala ali Ibrahim innaka Hamidum Majid. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ala ali Muhammadin kama sallaita ala Ibrahim wa ala ali Ibrahim innaka Hamidum Majid. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. Today, I am going to present the first lecture on the topic of tenses. Basically, translation from Urdu into English is a part of our inter part 2 syllabus of English compulsory, and when we study the B paper in our English compulsory, it includes a question of 15 marks on translation from Urdu into English. And today we will be discussing and learning translation through the, through the studying of the tenses. And today is the first lecture of the tenses. Let's start with the introduction of the tenses. Our lecture includes a discussion about the introduction to tenses and its classification based on time frame, the kinds of tenses there are according to the type of verb, and we will discuss in detail the present tense, and then we will look at some translation paragraphs for practice. So let's start. Before understanding what translation is, or before going on to the translation of the passages, we need to understand what is meant by the tense. हमें ये समझना होगा कि what is the definition of a tense is and what is the concept of a tense. So tense relates basically to the time of an action in a sentence. You know, every sentence is based around an action, and the word in the sentence which describes the action is often called the verb. So tense basically relates to the verb in a sentence, and it basically relates to the time of an action in the sentence, means when that particular action is taking place. And a verb indicates the time of an action, event, or a condition by changing its form. You know, when the form of the verb changes, it shows whether the action happened in past, whether it has been completed in past, whether it occurs in present, or whether it will be happening in the future. So through the form of the verb, which is the action in the sentence, we come to know about the tense of the sentence. And this is the definition of a tense as well, that it tells us about the time of an action in a sentence. कि वो जो काम है, the basic action which is described in the sentence, when that particular action happened, it talks about that. The tense also tells us about the time of an action in a sentence. Now we will look at how many kinds of the basic tenses are there according to the time. And this is a classification based on the time. And according to this classification, there is present tense, which expresses an unchanging, repeated, or recurring action or situation that exists only now. Means the present tense describes an action which is happening in the present, which is happening currently, जो कि अभी हो रहा है, उसको that is called the present tense. Past tense expresses an action or situation that was started and finished in past. Something which has happened. कोई भी ऐसा काम जो कि मुकम्मल तौर पे माजी में हो चुका है, that is described as the present past tense. Future tense expresses an action or a situation that will occur in future. It talks about the probability or possibility of an action in future. Future is something which a kind of action which expresses the possibility of some action in future, and that is the definition of a of future tense. कि कोई भी action, कोई भी ऐसा sentence, the action of in a sentence which is expressing a future possibility or something which will happen in future will relate to future tense. Now there are based on this classification of the time frame. This was a classification according to the time of an action. Means the action which will happen in the present will be considered then the sentence will be considered to be in the present tense. If it will happen in the past, then the form of the verb will be the past, and if it will be in the future, the form of verb will be considered to be the future tense. So because the tense always relates to the form of the verb, and whenever we have to create a sentence or change even to translate it, we need to look at the form of the verb which we are using. And here are I have, you can see that here I have described all the four forms of the each tense. Each tense according to their aspect, according to the kind of action which is described, is classified into four further types: the present indefinite, continuous, perfect, and perfect continuous. Each tense, first of all, the tenses are classified on the basis of the time of the action, whether the action was happening in the present, was it, did it happen in past, or will it happen in future. And then there is the classification based on aspect as well. Means what kind of action the is represented by the verb in the sentence, and we will look into it in more detail now. So our first tense is So our first tense is simple present or present indefinite. Simple present, basically, whenever we talk about translation of the sentences, we don't follow this old formula of ta hai, ti hai, and all that. Rather, what we do is to look at the kind of action which is being described. हमने उर्दू में ये देखना है कि what kind of action is there expressed in the sentence, वो किस किस्म का action है जो describe किया जा रहा है, whether it fulfills those conditions. Then first we will be identifying the tense of a sentence in Urdu, and later on we will transform it. हमें we should know about the recognition of each tense through its usage instead of the verbal markers. यानी कि हमें वो ता है ती है वाले formula की बजाय we have to look at the usage and the kind of action described, and according to that we can identify the tense, and we can use the respective form of the verb for creating our sentence. So the simple present is the first tense in the present tense, and it describes an action that is either happening currently in present, or that happens regularly or routinely. So present indefinite or simple present, in short, describes an action which is happening repeatedly. So whenever you come across a sentence which is describing a routine or a habit or a repeated action, or any kind of unchanging facts, this means that this sentence should be translated into using the simple present tense rules. Like there are some other usages of this tense as well, which I am I will be describing for you. Like for example, if you have to express your thoughts and feelings, like I think so, I like it, then simple present is used, and it is a simple present most often uses the first form of verb, with or without yes. And then we have, if you have to talk about a state, किसी भी चीज की हालत के बारे में, we live quite near. So and if you have to talk about repeated actions, habits, or routine, this tense is used. We come here every week. Unchanging facts and universal truths. The sun rises in the east. Now this is an unchanging fact. And similarly, you can translate some universal truths such as honesty is the best policy and all that glitters is not gold into the simple present or present indefinite, because it utilizes the first form of verb. Now let's go to, after the initial introduction to the usage of a tense, we will go to how to create the sentence or how to transform the sentence of Urdu into the English, or what are the rules of simple present tense. Simple present simple rules are that with the first person singular, you use just first form of verb. V1 indicates that you have to use the first form of verb. Each verb, has three forms, like one is present, the other is past, and there is another form. So you use the first form of verb with the first person singular, like I, you, we, and they. And on the other hand, with the third person singular, you use he, she, it, or if there is even any noun beside that. With he, she, it, or any noun, you use the first form of verb and you add s or es. Now the question arises, where would you use s and es, and where you would be adding s and where you would be adding es. Basically, wherever the third person singular is, or there is any noun as the subject of the sentence. Subject is the one who performs the action in a sentence. If it is in third person singular, or if it is a noun, then you need to put s or es with the first form of verb. Now those verbs which end with ch, sh, s, and x and z use es at the end. You will use es with those verbs. Like for example, Sarah catches the early train. Now Sarah is a noun, and according to the rule, the first form of verb should be accompanied by s or es, and the verb is catches. Look at the fact that there is ch used at the end of the verb spellings. So because the verbs which end with these particular syllables, or sorry, these particular letters like ch, sh, s, x, or z will take es, so we placed es here instead of s. Similarly, she faxes messages all over the world, because faxes, the last alphabet or last letter in fax is x. Therefore we used es with it and we didn't use s with it. So these are the rules. And on the other hand, in first person singular, we just need to use the first form of verb, and there is no need to use s or es. Like I get the lunch ready at 1 o'clock usually. Simple first form of verb is used with I, and we always do our shopping at Greenway. Now we will look at how to create the negatives and questions in simple present. Basically, for creating the negative in simple present tense, we don't we use with the first person singular, like I, you, we, they, we use do not, and with he, she, and it, or any noun, we use does not. Like he doesn't want to go shopping. And on the other hand, when you have to create a question in simple present tense, you use do and does at the beginning of the your question. Do and does are placed at the beginning, and the rule is same, that do is used for I, you, we, and they, and does is used with he, she, it, or some noun. And another important thing with the negatives and the question is that they just utilize the first form of verb and no s or es is added with them in the negatives and questions. Our next tense is present continuous tense or present progressive tense. As you can see here, that this tense utilizes the form of is, are, am, and the present participle, means the first form of verb and ing. So we will first look at what kind of sentences are those which can be translated into this particular form. So when the action in a sentence is related to an action, or when the verb in sentence is describing in an action which is happening currently, then we will be using present continuous tense, because present continuous tense often describes action which are incomplete, which are not complete. Continuous means something which is incomplete. So therefore, it and present means which is current. Therefore, present continuous tense is utilized to translate those sentences in which the action is continuing and it is incomplete, and it is happening right now at the current moment. Like, for example, she is cooking in the kitchen. The action is not completed. It is just going on. Actions that are temporary. On the other hand, the actions which are not going to last long were also, described in present continuous tense. Like, they are staying in London for a few days. And sometimes present continuous tense is also utilized to describe your definite future plans. Means whenever you are sure to do something in future. There is a difference between the possibility of doing a thing in future and certainty of doing a thing in future. When you are sure that you are going to perform this particular action in future, then you can express your definite future plan in, in present continuous tense. Like, I'm going hiking tomorrow. Now the person is expressing their, their plan, which is of which they are sure in present continuous tense. So what are the rules of present continuous tense? In affirmative sentences or in positive sentences, we use is, are, am, and the first form of verb with ing. This particular form is also called present participle. And he's sowing seeds in the fields. Now look at the fact that is and the verb which is sowing is accompanied by ing. Negative is created by adding not before the first form of verb and the helping verbs between. She's not listening to the radio. So not is added between the helping verb, which is rm, and the first form of verb and ing. The questions are created by using the helping verbs at the beginning of the question, using the helping verb at the beginning of the question, and then the subject is placed. Like, subject is the one who performs the action in a sentence. They is the performer of action in the sentence. Therefore, they is placed after the helping verb, and then we place the first form of verb and ing. So you basically you can translate each of the sentence which is happening in present and which describes an incomplete action into present continuous tense in English. First step in translation is always to identify the kind of sentence you have and the kind of action the sentence describes. And according to that, you can decide which of the rules will be applicable. If it is a sentence which describes an incomplete action which is continuing and which is happening now, then it is of present continuous tense. And I have told you that which kind of the sentences will be translated using the simple present tense. Next tense which we are going to study is present perfect tense. As the name indicates, perfect means complete. So you can just look at the meanings of the title of the tense in order to understand the concept or the kind of action they represent. Perfect means complete. and present means what is happening just now. It tells us about a recently completed action, and because perfect means a complete action and present means what is happening now, therefore present perfect tense is, it represents a recently completed action, an action which completed in present. Basically it is used to describe an action that began in past and has just been completed. I have just finished my lunch. The aircraft has landed. They have learned the words. Now look at the example. I have just finished my lunch. It means that the person started taking the lunch sometime in past, and now he has finished taking his lunch. Means this shows that this action started in past, but it has been completed in present. So in this way, we can identify our Urdu sentences that if they represent a recently completed action, then they can be translated into present perfect tense. Now the question arises how to, translate a sentence from Urdu into English if it describes a recently completed action. Now from this figure you can also understand what I mean to say, that an action which had started in past time but which is which is finished in present time will be of the present perfect tense. The affirmative sentences or the positive sentences of present perfect tense are created by using has and have and the third form of verb. The third person, he, she, it, and noun, they take has with them, and the first person like I, we, they, you utilize have with them. We have just come back from our holiday. Negative sentences are created by, putting, not between the helping verbs and the third form of verb. Like she has not drunk her coffee. Has was used because it is third person. Not is used between has and drunk, which is the third form of verb. Similarly, interrogative is created by putting the helping verbs, which is has and have, at the beginning of the sentence, and then the subject. Subject is the performer of the action in a sentence. Like, have you opened your letter? Now, you is used as the subject of the sentence, and you is placed in the middle, and opened. The third form of verb is used after it. So this will be the way of transforming the sentences which are of present perfect tense. Present perfect continuous is the last type of the present tense according to its aspect, and it represents an action. Now it requires some of the concentration on the part of the students to understand this tense. It is also very easy to look at the sentence. Now present means something which is happening now, or something which is an action of the present. Perfect means complete. On the other hand, continuous means incomplete. So why is there a dichotomy in this particular tense? Basically, present perfect continuous is used to describe an action that happens over a period of time and lasts up to present. So what does this mean? Consider this example that you go to the bus stop and you have also asked your friend to reach the bus stop, but 20 minutes have passed and you are waiting for your friend. It means that you are waiting for your friend for 20 minutes, and the action of waiting continued. It started in past. 20 minutes means that it is a part of past, and the action of waiting started in past, but it is still continuing into present. You are still waiting. So present perfect is used to describe an action which, although it started in past, but it is not complete in present. It is still continuing. Therefore, it is the continuous is used in its title as well. You will just look at the titles of the tenses in order to understand what they mean, and in this way the recognition of the tenses will be easier for you. Because the present perfect, which we previously studied, means an action which is complete. But perfect continuous means that an action which started in past but which is not still complete. And most often with these kind of sentences, whether they are in Urdu or whether they are in English, the time period of the action is often mentioned. means the time period over which the action was happening is often mentioned. Like for example, we have we have been waiting here for 20 minutes. The time period of action is mentioned, and this will also tell you that this action started in past. The burglar alarm has been ringing since 8 o'clock this morning. So this also tells the time period is mentioned, and it shows that the burglar alarm started, ringing in a time in past. एक उस वक्त में वो काम हो रहा था जो कि पास्ट का हिस्सा बन चुका है, and now it is, even now it is not over, even now it is incomplete, it is still taking place. That's why the we call it the perfect continuous tense. So what is the method of translating these kinds of sentences from Urdu into English? Has and have been, has and have were also utilized as helping verbs, but with them we add been and the first form of verb and ing. And once again, as I told you previously, that the second person and third person, the third person singular will use has, and the first person will use have. And similarly, the negative will be created by putting not between, has, have, and been. This is all about the tenses that we have learned today. We have gone through the definition of, let me review all of my lecture. I have I described what is meant by tense. Tense is basically, it relates to the form of the verb in a sentence, and it tells us about the time of an action, like whether the action happened in present time, whether it is happening now, whether it was done in past, whether it started and finished in a past time, or whether it expresses an action which will happen in future. And based on that, we studied the classification of tenses into 4 further types. And today we discussed in detail the forms and the usage of the present tense. We discussed the simple present. The simple present tense describes an action that is either happening right now or that happens regularly or routinely. The first form of verb with s or es is utilized in, third person singular, and the first form of verb is used in, first person singular. Then we looked at how to create the negatives and the questions by using do not and does not. We also learned about the use of present continuous tense. Present continuous tense describes an action which is incomplete in present and which is happening now, but which is incomplete. And it also expresses, it may be used for expressing definite future plans. The sentences are translated using is, are, am plus the present participle, first form of verb and ing. Similarly, present perfect tense describes a recently completed action, as is evident from the word perfect, because perfect means complete. And present perfect continuous describes an action which happened, which started in past, but which is continuing into present and which is not complete. And we looked at how to transform the sentences and the rules of creating the negative and the interrogative. Now here I have attached a file for you. There are a number of translation passages from Urdu into English, and most particularly these are in present and past tense, the tenses we studied today. What you have to do, that you have to translate them, and you can get them checked by your instructors or your class teachers for your practice. Second important exercise which you can do to increase or to develop your vocabulary, because vocabulary or your storehouse of words and their meanings in English plays a very important role in your study. Therefore, you need to learn a new vocabulary, and for that I have included a list about a list which can help you learn more English words, and which will increase your uh, mental storehouse of the English words along with their Urdu meanings, and which will help you in translation. And you can get that by clicking at this link. Thank you. My lecture is complete. Allah Hafiz.